Hi everyone, welcome to the Pro MMA Betting podcast. We're going to discuss the card coming up tomorrow, the Figueiredo Benavidez rematch. I'm going to make this a really quick podcast. I know I've said that in the past when I've been trying to do them quickly and it hasn't transpired, but this is going to be a quick one. There's been basically 3 events in a week. This podcast is pretty time consuming. It takes up the best part of half a day for me. I've already done 2. I've got to do 1 for next week, early part of next week. So I'm just going to fly through this card. It's not going to be as comprehensive as it normally is. Be back to normal for next week's card, but this will be a quick recap. As always, we just recap on how we got on at the weekend. Basically, a small loss had Razak closing a 3-unit parlay with Curtis Blades from when Blades fought the Russian chap whose name is escaping me at the moment. Shouldn't have trusted Razak in that spot. Laziz, there'd been no tape in a couple of years. I broke one of my kind of foundation rules there. I don't bet against people if there's no tape. Normally within 18 months, kind of rough rule of thumb. Laziz, there was nothing within the last 2 years except for a brief clip of him demolishing some scrub. I relied too heavily on how he looked a couple of years ago against a Swedish journeyman type. He seemed he didn't look impressive. He was struggling. He eventually got the knockout, but there's an error there, big error on my part. I shouldn't have underestimated him. And credit to Laziz, extremely calm under fire. Not many people would be that relaxed taking that kind of firepower. So we lost the double there with Razak losing. The only other 2 bets where we had Jack Shaw inside the distance at -150, which came in, and we had not Chris Fishgold, we had Jared Gordon at -130, which came in as well. So 2 solid bets there that came in, ruined by a silly play on Razak. So it was a small loss for members. Live bet in front, it was a very quiet night. I only made 1 live bet tip all night, and that was Jimmy Rivera by decision about -120 after round 1. The Tim Elliott fight, I nearly pulled the trigger. I should have tipped Tim Elliott. I always say when it's 1-1 going into round 3, you have to go with the guy that's the underdog, because normally the price is too wide. I think Tim was a 2-1 underdog going into round 3, and I had it 1-1, although I wasn't entirely sure, but I did think it was 1-1. Should have pulled the trigger there on Tim at +200. As I say, that's something that I always look for on live betting, is the books always underprice one of the fighters. They never put it as a pick-em. Obviously, sometimes if the tide has completely turned, it's justified. But, a fight like that where it's still competitive. But the thing that put me off Tim was he hadn't really done much at all to initiate any success. The reason he won round 2, all of his takedowns had been stuffed, except for one right at the end of round 1. Round 2, I can't remember what Benoit had done now. He'd done something stupid that put himself on the bottom. I think, did he shoot? I think he shot on Elliott and he got stuffed and ended up on his back. I can't remember. But he'd done something stupid, but it wasn't something that Elliott done to put him in that position. It was something silly Benoit done. So I was just thinking, well, Benoit's kind of controlled the fight, and he only got that good position because Elliott kind of gave it, because Benoit gave it to him. They kind of put me off, but I should have just stuck with my normal plays for live bet in terms of going into round 3 if it's been a competitive fight and one guy's a big underdog. But otherwise, I didn't really see any spots I liked. So it was a quiet night on live betting. But the one bet we made cashed, so that was handy. So if you want to sign up to the service, guys, we've got about over 160 members in the Discord channel where the live betting tips are. It's a community. The chaps are always on there discussing fights. You've got some real knowledgeable guys in there. It's not just guys that are rookies and don't know what they're talking about. A lot of them really knowledgeable. So if you want to talk fights, it's a great community for that. We freeze the chat during the fight, so you can only see the tips that I tip for live betting. Pre-bets are emailed out to members. We've got a couple of pre-bets for the card tomorrow. And I'm just wrapping up the card for next week. I've got a couple of fights left to tape. It's £195 for the year. If you bet £100 per unit, last year members won £14,500. So if you've got a unit size, unless your units are tiny, you're going to make profit with us, guys. Even if it's only £20 units, you're still going to make money, or $20, you're going to make money over the year. But you've got to come in with a long-term vision. I say it all the time. We can't win every show. You have to take the losses with the wins. If you can't handle a loss, don't sign up. I don't need people spitting there or throwing their toys out the pram over one loss. We're going to have losing events. We can't win every event. It's a long-term game. This is what makes me different. I treat this as investing. You've got to take the peaks and troughs. But ultimately, over the long term, we will win. It's changed my life. I do this as a full-time job. It's given me no money worries for the rest of my life. Completely changed my life. But I'm very disciplined. I've still put the time in. I put out this podcast because I like to prove to members that I am taping every fight. I'm not just throwing crap at the wall hoping it sticks. So a lot of time and work goes into these results. But you have to have a long-term vision, guys. We will have a rough period. We'll have good periods. We'll have rough periods. But what you need to look at is year-end results where we come away with profit. So if you want to sign up, ProMMABetting.com. Memberships are on there. If you want to DM me on Twitter, at ProMMA Betting. I often run a discount on the yearly, so keep an eye on that. So I'm going to run through the card, guys. As I said, it's going to be very quick today. I haven't got time to kind of spend an hour on this. So we'll start with the first fight. It's at heavyweight. Sergei Spivak taking on Carlos Felipe. Going back to what I just said regarding Razak, Carlos Felipe hasn't fought in 3 years. There's no tape in 3 years. There's a little bit of tape around. One of his fights is on Fight Pass. I think the UFC signed him. He got done by USADA. I think his physique looked better in the last fight I could find. You can see again, it looks he's gone a little bit soft again since he's been caught by USADA. But still, no tape in 3 years. He's a young guy. Who knows what Carlos Felipe is going to turn up? It could be the same trash one from the tape, or it could be an improved version. 3 years is a long time for a young guy. This is low-level heavyweight as well, where anything can happen. Sergei Spivak, he's had 3 fights in the UFC now. He's 1-2. He has losses to Ty Bora and Walt Harris, and he got a win over Ty Tuivasa, which is a decent enough win. Spivak's about -150 here. I'm going to pick Spivak just because I know more about him. He's not terrible, but he is lower level. I don't think he's going to be in the UFC too long unless they match him reasonably well, and he keeps fighting lower level guys such as Felipe. He's -160 now. I'm just looking. But, I mean, there's no interest for me. I'm not betting low-level heavyweight fights as a general rule of thumb. You guys that are regular listeners know that. Sergei Spivak falls under that umbrella. And Carlos Felipe, no tape in 3 years. No, thank you. But I will pick Spivak because Felipe will need to have improved to beat Spivak. And 3 years is a long time to do that. But I'm just going to pick Spivak here. But I don't really think there's any value on the betting line. Spivak could come out and absolutely toast the guy, as I've said, but if he has made some improvements, it can end up being a lot more competitive. So I'll go with Spivak here. Next fight is Arman Tsaskayan. I can't remember how to say surname, so guys, I'm crap with surnames. He's taking on David Ramos. Arman, I think Arman will win this fight. His stand-up's okay. He's got quite a kick-heavy approach. I think he's going to try and throw a lot of kicks at Davey from distance. Davey can be a bit low volume, a bit hesitant. He waits to counter guys, and he can kind of throw rounds away. He's obviously a top-level grappler, really, really good. But I think he's going to struggle to get Arman down to the mat here. We saw how good Arman's wrestling is in his 2 UFC fights. So I think it will play it on the feet, this one. I don't think Arman's going to be looking to take Davey round. And I think Arman can kind of put in the same performance that Makhachev done, where he just beat him up on the feet, basically. Edged him out on the feet. He knocked him down in round 3 and stayed on top for all of round 3. But I think Arman will just outwork him on the feet. Young guy. He's going to be improving fight to fight still at his age. I think he's just turned 23. Davey's 33 now. But I think it will be close. I don't think Arman's going to run away with it. His striking is still developing, but I just don't like how David doesn't pull the trigger. So I'll go with Arman decision there. I think there's any real great value on the money line. Arman -200. Perhaps his decision line now. I see this going to a decision way more often than not. Arman decisions, different books. It's -130. It's -110. -125. I think that's where the value lies on that fight is Arman decision. Next, we've got Amir Albazi taking on Malcolm Gordon. Amir Albazi, both guys making their UFC debuts. This fight has kind of come out of cancellations. You had a guy called Tagir, who actually had a big bet on against another Russian. That was the original fight. Tagir pulled out because of Khabib's dad's death. Then the Russian he was fighting pulled out. The Russian was meant to fight Malcolm Gordon. The Russian then pulled out. Then they brought in Amir Albazi on week or so notice here. I know Amir Albazi from the regional scene here in the UK. He trains at my old gym, London Shoe Fighters. A very good prospect. I think he's Iranian. Done very well in the regional scene, kind of run through everyone. The one step-up fight he had was against Jose Torres. Competitive fight with Jose. Lost the first round, won the second round, and the third round he lost. Made an error there. He jumped for a guillotine, put himself on his back. Can't be doing stuff like that at that level, so it should have been a learning lesson for him. He's a young chap. Malcolm Gordon, hard to get a read on, not a lot of recent tape on him, hasn't fought very frequently. His chin definitely looks suspect. I'm not sure if it's going to matter against Albazi, who is more of a grappler, so he might get away with that here. He got his BJJ black belt when he won his last fight against a decent fighter. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but he's been on the Ultimate Fighter. It was a rough start for Gordon, but he got a takedown, and the guy seemed to injure himself on landing, and then Gordon got the quick submission. So I was hoping to get Albazi at around even money or maybe as a slight favourite, but a little bit of money's been coming in on Gordon. He's been bet down a little bit, Amir, from opening at -135. I think he did. He got bet up to about -180. He's currently around the -160 mark. I will pick Albazi here. Very solid grappler. I think he's got a brighter future than Malcolm. I think he will out-grapple Malcolm. I think he's going to win this fight with the grappling. Maybe he can get the submission. -160 though, because I just don't have a full read on Malcolm. It's a little bit pricey for me. So I'm not going to play that line on Albazi, but if the line drops a bit more, I'll be tempted. But at the moment, it's a pass fight for me, but I will take Albazi here. I think he's a decent enough prospect, and I'm not really sold on Malcolm. Next fight, we have it's Brett Johns taking on Montel Jackson, men's bantamweight division. I think Montel's maybe getting a little bit too much stick for his last fight against Álvarez. He did win the fight. It was 30-25, I think, on some scorecards, 30-26. I mean, completely dominated. There was just some dodgy fight IQ where he was going for the takedowns when he needed, but I think that's because he was tired. He put a lot of effort in trying to stop Álvarez. I have no idea how Álvarez survived some of the shots he took. He ate some huge shots where he was badly hurt, but he managed to survive for the 3 rounds. He was pretty much taken down at will. We've seen that Montel's very good Greco-Roman. He had a good wrestling background before he joined the UFC. There was rumours that he could have made a run for the Olympics, but I'm pretty sure he's a Greco guy. Huge hands, we always talk about it. Big reach. Brett Johns has had a bit of a rough run in the UFC. He's coming off a good win over Tony Gravely. Before that, he faced some stiff competition in Aljo and Pedro Munoz. True gritty fighter. He's happy to take a hit to give one. Solid grappling. I think this is a good test for Montel. I think if Montel doesn't get him out of here in the first round, I think this fight could get interesting. Montel can be taken down. He's got that, he's massive for 135. I don't know if he's going to have to move up to 145 soon because his body's going to be filling out, and he did slow a bit against Álvarez. Now, it was a high-paced fight, but I just think, you look at his legs are very thin. I just think 145 would maybe be a better move for him. But, he knows what he's doing. He knows what the cut's like. If he feels fine at 135, then who am I to say anything? But Brett Johns, definitely a scrappy guy. Solid grappling. I don't think he's on Ricky Simmons level with the wrestling. In fact, I know he isn't. But he can go hard for 3 rounds. He's not going to slow down. So, yeah, if Montel can't put him away early, I think it could get interesting. But, I have to side with Montel still. Money has been coming in on Brett. You can get Montel at about -200 now. I can understand why people are betting that. I think on the feet, he's got massive range advantage. I think he wins the fight standing up. And on the mat, He can hit takedowns on Brett Johns, most likely, from the body lock. He's got really good takedowns, hasn't really got great top control, so I think Brett will be able to work his way back to his feet. And this is where Montel can tire himself out, because he kind of does go to the wrestling a little bit by default, and he's not got the best top control. Someone like Brett Johns is going to be hard for him to hold down, I feel. So, and he needs to be careful in the scrambles. Brett Johns is a solid grappler. So I think this fight could be competitive if we get out of round one. But I've got to go with Montel. He's got all the physical attributes, the size. He's the more well-rounded fighter. But you can't count someone out like Brett Johns, tough, scrappy guy. So I'll go with Montel. Minus 200, I can understand why people would be betting that. I've not looked at the decision line, but Montel by decision might hold some value maybe. Bearing in mind it's a 135 fight, guys. These guys aren't normally finishers. Although Montel, with that range and size of his hands, you can't count it out. Just having a look. Jackson wins by decision. Is even money. Yeah, not really any value there for me. But I will go Montel. But I do think, I know there are people on Johns, and then I know there's people that's on Montel that are very competitive, but that are very confident. But I think it will be a competitive fight unless Montel can do like what he done to Kelleher and blow him away really quick. Next, we've got Joe Duffy taking on Joel Álvarez. Look, I've got to pick Joe Duffy here. A couple of years ago, if Joe Duffy hadn't have had them back-to-back losses to Marc Diakiese and James Vick, he'd probably be a minus 1,000 favourite here. Joe Álvarez is not UFC quality against Ismagulov, who is a very good fighter. He done absolutely nothing cool fight, just stood in front of him and just showed that he's tough. Against Bilardo, the Italian, he was more active on the feet. Was that because he got the octagon jitters out of the way, or because he knew he had a pretty poor opponent in front of him as opposed to Ismagulov? I'm not sure, probably a combination of the two. But Bilardo took him down easy and just held him down the first round. Second round, he got him down again easy. Eventually got swept and Álvarez pounded him out. But Bilardo is not UFC quality at all. And like I said, neither is Joe Álvarez. Joe Duffy, you do wonder where he's at. He's coming off them back-to-back losses. He's been a little bit inactive, but the guy's a quality fighter, really good boxing. He's got a taekwondo background. He's got really solid grappling. Trains out at TriStar, been out there for this camp. I just don't really see how Álvarez wins this unless Duffy just, has one foot out the door. But, he is tough, Álvarez. I think it's going to be tough to get out of there, but I have to pick Joe Duffy. He's on a different level to Joe Álvarez. The over 2.5, I did see it sitting on Bet Online yesterday at minus 145, which I thought was a pretty good line because Álvarez is durable. And Duffy has more subs on his record than KOs. I'm not really sure how Duffy's going to approach this fight, whether he's going to be contentious to stand or whether he's going to mix in the takedowns. I definitely think calf kicks are there. Álvarez is huge for the division. He's got long, skinny, lanky legs. I think it'd be smart of Duffy to use what worked against him, against Diakiese. Diakiese fried his calf in a couple of minutes. Joe had to change stance. You could see he's not comfortable from southpaw. It just, the fight was over in the first couple of minutes there against Diakiese. So I think he'd be smart to use that against Álvarez. I think he could hurt that calf pretty early and pretty quick. So yeah, I'll have to pick Joe Duffy there. And the over of 2.5 is interesting. Grant Dawson had Narimani next. Now that I know from the regional scenes, had a few fights in the UFC now. He's coming off a loss to the chap we're seeing next week. I can't remember his name. Mike Grundy. He had Grundy hurt. Looked like the tide was turning in that fight after he lost the first round, and then he gets clipped from a left hook and gets finished by Grundy. Now, it's a well-rounded fighter, solid grappler, strong for the division. Grant Dawson is going to look to get the fight to the mat, I'm sure. Dawson's stand-up isn't great. I think the line's a bit wide here, but at the same time, I just think Dawson is a level above Narimani. But I'm not in love with playing minus 250. I think for me personally, if you look at this fight, I think the over is where the value might be at, and that is at around minus 175. Nad's a solid grappler. He's competent on the ground. I think he can probably survive against Grant Dawson on the ground. And also, I don't think Dawson's just going to be able to take Nad down at will. I mean, Nad, he got taken down by Mike Grundy, scrambled back to his feet, and then the other couple of shots from Grundy, he did stuff. If you go back to his Cage Warriors fight with Paddy Pimblett, he did get taken down by Paddy. Paddy could never really secure top control because of the physicality, but I think his takedown defence has improved. He spends a lot of time out at Alpha Male. He's not been there for this camp due to what's going on in the world, but I don't think Grant's just going to be able to come out and just take him down when he wants. So we could see some extended periods on the feet here where I think Nad will be okay. For me, the over is potentially where the value is on that fight. I don't think there's any value on Dawson's money line there. When you bear in mind that he is pretty much a grappler still. His stand-up still needs a fair bit of improvement. So if you can't get the fight to the floor and he's stuck on the feet, this could get interesting. So the over for me, but I will pick Dawson to win that fight. Next fight, we've got Khadis Ibragimov taking on Roman Dolidze. So Roman, I watched some tape on him. He is watched a few of his fights. Low volume guy. He looks a bit better in his last fight though that I watched. But some of his other fights, he was pretty low volume. He was still, low volume in his last fight, but it was improved compared to his other fights. He hits hard when he does throw and land, but he's a little bit predictable. Khadis, we've seen in UFC a couple of times. The guy just doesn't pace himself. He comes out like a madman in round one, tries to finish you, and if he can't, we've seen what happens. His gas tank just drops off a cliff. So, Roman is a decent favourite here. I can't be betting him at minus 180, minus 190. I've not seen enough on tape from him to suggest that he deserves that line. He spent some time at Jackson Wink, but I think that was like last year. He done some work with John Jones, but the line's just a bit wide for me. But it's so hard to trust Khadis because of his style, where surely he's going to come out and try and pace himself a little bit here. So I'm going to pick Khadis. I don't like the pick, but I just, I'm not paying nearly minus 200 on Roman Dolidze when he's done nothing on tape to, his last fight was a low percentage KO. He was like spinning back fist in round 3. So I'm not touching that. I'm going to pick Khadis, but I'm fully aware that if it gets past round 1, he's probably going to lose the fight unless he has learned how to pace himself, because the guy just fights like an absolute lunatic. The fight is at William Hill. You can get over 1.5 rounds, minus 150, which I don't think is a bad bet. The other thing that did catch my eye, I know I've picked Khadis, but the Leeds decision opened at Bet365 at plus 450, which I don't think is a bad line. I don't know if it's still plus 450 because it was higher than what other books had. So let me just have a quick look. The Leeds decision plus 333. It's actually been bet down now. Is that 365? Yeah, it's been bet down now. So that is kind of. But I don't mind that over 1.5 at William Hill, minus 150. And yeah, Khadis plus 150. I wouldn't go big, guys, because it's one of them fights where you'll, unless he comes out and blows him away quick, you're going to be pulling your hair out. It's one of them. But I see it being a bit back and forth. Roman didn't blow me away on tape. I can understand why he's the favourite, but I think he's too much of a favourite. So I'll pick Khadis here. And I do kind of like the over at William Hill, the over 1.5. Right, main card next. First fight on the main card, we've got I just noticed as well, the Grant Dawson Narimani fight is actually a catchweight of 150 pounds. I didn't know that. Don't think it really makes any difference, really. I'm not sure who would hold the advantage there. That's a pretty big 145er. So yeah, 150, I've just noticed that. First fight on the main card, Alexandre Pantoja taking on Askarov. Pantoja is a guy I'm a fan of. I let Max bet on him in his last fight against Matt Schnell. I think he's improved. He's at American Top Team now. I think he's been improving since he went over to American Top Team. As I said, he's coming off that win over Schnell. Before that, he fought, I think it was Figueiredo, the fight before that, where he put in a very spirited performance. He took some punishment off Figueiredo, but the guy kept coming, and even right at the end of round 3, he started to kind of walk Figueiredo down. It's just Figueiredo seems to have such a good chin. when you hit him, the shots just bounce off. But you could see Figueiredo was starting to feel the pace in that fight. So I thought, even though Pantoja did take a bit of a beating in that fight and he clearly lost, he came out with some respect from me in that fight. I thought that was a gallant display. Before that, he put away Wilson Hayes, put away Sasaki, outstruck Brandon Moreno pretty comprehensively over 3 rounds. Before that, lost a very, very close decision to Dustin Ortiz. So Pantoja, I think the game plan for him here against a wrestler in Askarov is to outstrike Askarov. We've seen him in the UFC twice. Draw with Brandon Moreno, which I still don't agree with that. I thought Moreno won that fight. I remember live betting Moreno and getting a really good line on him. I think it was after round 1. So I still don't agree that was a draw. He got outstruck by Moreno. He managed to get the fight to the floor. Couldn't really keep Moreno down. Moreno's scrambly. But showed he's got good wrestling in that fight. But ultimately, he couldn't hold him down and he got outstruck. He's coming off a win over Tim Elliott, Tim Elliott was on autopilot most of that fight. He looked like he was going to face plant Tim Elliott in round 1. Caught him with a right hook from his southpaw stance. Elliott somehow stayed awake, and he said he doesn't remember the rest of the fight, basically. He controlled Elliott on the feet, showed some improved stand-up in that fight, but, Moreno's a scrappy kind of guy that will throw down, whereas Elliott was, as we saw the other day, he was just trying to, we thought a bit smart the other day, Elliott, to be fair, but in this fight, he was just like leading with his head, just walking forward, he just made it so easy for Askarov just to kind of pick away at him as he was attempting that. One knock I do have on Askarov, and I remember when I done taping him before he fought Moreno, was on the Russian scene. You see him on his back a few times, and he's not good off his back. Now, you saw this against Moreno as well. Moreno held him down all of round 3. When you're a flyweight, you shouldn't be getting held down. It's not a good look. Normally when you watch flyweight fights, it's very hard for them to hold someone down because they're so light and scrambly. They just are able to work their way back to their feet. Tim Elliott took him down a few times, got him down in the second round, and Tim Elliott has very poor top control because he's submission over position, and Elliott had him down for like over a minute. So I'm not sold on his bottom game at all here, and even though I don't think Pantoja is going to be the one coming out going for takedowns, Askarov will go for takedowns here, and Pantoja is a very good scrambler. If you go back and watch the Dustin Ortiz fight, and I think that Pantoja has improved a lot since that Dustin Ortiz fight, he still out-scrambles Dustin Ortiz, who's one of the best scramblers in the business. He's up there with Joe Benavidez in terms of scrambling. He manages to have long periods of control on Dustin Ortiz. I think in the first round, he manages to get his back for a long period of the first round from a scramble. And in the third round, he has a long period of having Dustin Ortiz's back as well. So Askarov needs to be careful in these scrambles that he doesn't come worse off. And as I said, he does have this poor ability to get up from the bottom. So he could find himself stuck in a bad position. And Moreno does take his back as well in the third round, towards the end of the round. So he's got to be careful in those scrambles because, he might be able to hit some takedowns on Pantoja, but I just don't see him being able to hold Pantoja down for any extended period at all. So it's going to be hard for him to rack up points in that sense. And on the feet, and Pantoja throws down, and he's got some power as well. He put down Wilson Hayes, put out Schnell. I know Schnell's chinny, but he's got some power in those hands, and stand-up's obviously something he's been working on. So I'm going with Pantoja here. I think he's the more well-rounded fighter, and I think he's going to come away with a victory. Minus 200 is the line currently. Just having a look at his decision line. Pantoja KO plus 375. I'm not sure he's going to, I'm not saying he's a KO artist now. Wilson Hayes as well, who he knocked out, was kind of at the end of the road. Pantoja by decision is plus 115. I don't think that's a terrible bet. I don't like going massive on prop bets. If you like the money line, just bet the money line, as I always say, and throw a little bit on the decision line. But I'm going to go with Pantoja here. Next fight, Lipski against Luana Carolina. This fight was scheduled to take place, I can't remember when, but I had a bet on Carolina at about plus 120. when this was originally scheduled. Now, the bets have been voided, and I can't get plus 120 now anyway. But even if I could, I probably would pass now. I don't think the line's quite wide enough. It's low-level women's MMA, and that Bell Beta fight, although these two aren't nearly as low level as that, it's just left a sour taste in my mouth with regards to looking at betting women's MMA moving forward that is lower level. And as I say, they're not as low level, but it's still, Lipski's someone that everyone loved coming into the UFC, and I still don't understand why. I don't think she looked great pre-UFC. And Carolina, she's not easy on the eye to look at in terms of her fundamentals, her technique. But I'm still picking her to win here. I'm just not sold on Lipski at all. She's still the underdog. There's no chance in hell I bet Lipski as a favourite. And I think Carolina can get the job done. And I'm hoping she's kind of going to be improving. She's a little bit awkward looking, but I think she can get the job done here. So I'm still picking Carolina. I think it's going to go the distance. Where's Carolina decision? Carolina decision is plus 165. Not as wide as I was hoping. I thought you might get plus 200 on it. But yeah, I'm going Carolina. And if you like her, just take the money line, guys. She's the underdog. So pick for me as Carolina. Next fight, Marc, Diakiese, Rafael, Fiziev. We're really looking forward to this one. Real quick, this just comes down to Marc Diakiese and how he can handle pressure. His last couple of fights, they weren't pressure fighters, and he, against both Lando and Duffy, he disabled them really early with the calf kicks. Both had to switch stance basically within the first couple of minutes. I think even against Lando, it was literally in the first 30 seconds. He threw like 4 calf kicks. So he disabled them, and then he kind of was able to just pick them off for the rest of the fight. Last time we saw him face someone with pressure was Nasrat, who was a southpaw, so the calf kick wasn't there for him, and he really struggled. Fiziev, we all know, very experienced Thai fighter. I think he's one of the coaches out at Tiger Muay Thai. Very aggressive guy. He's going to be the most aggressive guy that Diakiese has faced since Diakiese faced Nasrat. What I did notice from just watching the Alex White fight is Fiziev is very hittable. When Alex White was throwing, he was landing. And Fiziev slowed down as well. He's at a really high pace, and he definitely slowed down the second half of the fight. He did switch to southpaw a few times in that fight. I can only remember 1 or 2 occasions where he actually threw anything from southpaw. Now, I didn't dig back into his catalogue, but someone told me that he has fought out of a southpaw stance in some fights. So I just wonder if he pulls a Neil Magny against Tony Martin here and comes out southpaw to throw Diakiese off maybe. So I'm interested to see if he is comfortable fighting from southpaw, because I think if he is, then I think it's definitely the smart thing to do here is to at least mix up his stance, if not fight southpaw. But he's going to come out, I imagine he's going to get in Marc's face, and he's going to try and make it a dirty, ugly fight. As I said, he is hittable, and he did slow down, and I've not seen him. We saw him lose his UFC debut, and then we saw him beat Alex White, who isn't great. So it's, I don't want to overrate Fiziev either here. But from a betting perspective, Marc is minus 155, Fiziev is plus 135. So I'm going to pick Fiziev. He's plus 139 at Bet Online. The pressure, the other thing as well is Marc, which I didn't mention. Marc does have some good wrestling. He's very physically strong. Fiziev, again, his takedown defense is a bit of an unknown. His get-up game, bit of an unknown. So there are definitely unknowns here. So yeah, there's unknowns here because Marc could get the grappling going. We've never seen Marc hold someone down for extended periods. I'm sure Fiziev is going to have a get-up game, so he's probably going to work back to his feet. But what it probably will do is tire Fiziev out, and we did see him tire, as I said, against White in a fight that was, all one-way traffic pretty much. So this is a tough one. I think it's going to be a close fight. So I've got to go with Fiziev just because of the pressure and the line. If the line was a bit closer, I'd pick Diakiese, but I just think Diakiese's last 2 successes have come from the calf kicks. Fiziev, experienced Thai fighter that can potentially switch stances and potentially deal with the calf kicks regardless. If Marc can't get that going, then the pressure, he's not going to like it. He likes space to work his funky kicks. So I'm going to go Fiziev just based on the line. Not massively confident. There's unknowns, as I've said, with Fiziev already. So I won't go out going big on Fiziev here, guys. But Fiziev's the pick for me. Hermansson, Kelvin Gastelum, the co-main. I just can't get a read in this fight. I can't get a read in it. I knew before tape I was going to struggle to get a read, but I thought, no, I'm going to do the tape because my gut liked Gastelum, but it's the Chris Weidman fight that just really puts me off. I know Jack Hermansson isn't a wrestler of Chris Weidman's capabilities, but he is strong. Kelvin is a welterweight. I don't care what anyone says, he shouldn't be a middleweight. It's going to be a big size advantage here. Kelvin, his takedown defense, it's okay. He does scramble back up, but like you watch a Weidman fight and he does scramble up a few times, but eventually he just gets drowned by Weidman and Hermansson. From doing the tape that I looked at for Hermansson, he got shut down by Cannonier, but you got to remember Cannonier was a 265-pound heavyweight. This guy's going to be immensely strong. He tried doubles on Cannonier that got shut down. I watched his fight with Jacare. He was able to hit some takedown on Jacare. Now, granted, some were in round 5 when Jacare had slowed down, but he did get him down early. I think round 1 he got a takedown, but he did time it well off of a low kick. Now, that's not going to happen here because Gastelum is a southpaw. To time a takedown off of the inside leg kick is very difficult, so it's unlikely there. So he's going to have to kind of initiate these takedowns of his own accord. Let me just bring up Hermansson's record. So I'm just drawing a bit of a blank on the fights that I rewatched. Against David Branch, I'm trying to recall what happened there. I think it was Branch that went for a takedown and ended up getting. But he's got a really good guillotine, Hermansson, that he transitions to from a scramble. He nearly even hit it on Jacare. He hit Branch with it. He hit Joel Meerschaert with it. These are really good grapplers that he's hit with this. So Kelvin's got to be really careful if he does get taken down, scrambling back to his feet with regards to that guillotine. We saw him beat Tao's latest, a fight where he really badly hurt I think it was his rib. Looked like he was done and still came back and won the fight. He has struggled with him. If you look at his record, he struggled with power strikers. He got knocked out by Thiago Santos and he's coming off a loss to Jared Cannonier. Now, Gastelum does hit hard, but he's a very small middleweight. Jared and Thiago Santos, Santos now fights at 205. Jared used to be a 265-pound heavyweight. And he struggled with Mutanti as well. On the feet, Mutanti kept putting the jab in his face and eventually took him down and subbed him. And Mutanti again, even though I know he fought at 170, that's like Rumble-esque 170. No idea how that guy got to 170. He's a giant middleweight. So, these are big guys that he's lost to. Big, physical, strong guys that he's struggled with. You take away the Sousa win and, all of Hermansson's wins are a bit, doesn't really beat anyone. And Jacare that seems to be the fight where age caught up with him. But it's still a win over Jacare. I don't want to take that away from him. I don't want to be discrediting the win. But I've bet on Hermansson fights twice. I bet Jacare against Hermansson. And I bet Jared Cannonier against Hermansson. And I'll be completely honest, I bet Jared Cannonier at plus 200 pre-tape because I thought the line was off. I did tape and I hated the bet. I wanted to buy out, but I just couldn't because the line never moved to enable me to. But I hated the bet. But I just had to ride it out. And then he came out looking like he should have been a minus 300 favourite. So I don't feel I have the best read on Hermansson is what I'm trying to say. And even Kelvin Gastelum, I looked at Gastelum and from memory, I've bet on very few Kelvin Gastelum fights as well. Let me just bring up his record just to remember the fights I've bet on him. I bet on him against Michael Bisping, but that was more fade on Bisping because he was coming off a KO loss and turning around way too quickly. I think that is the only time I've ever bet on Kelvin Gastelum. I don't think I've bet against him either. So it's just 2 fights I don't have a great read on. Kelvin is southpaw. Now, if you can hit a single leg takedown, it's really easy to pick up the single leg against a southpaw if you're an orthodox fighter. Chris Weidman did it, but Chris Weidman, it's one of his favourite takedowns, is to like snatch single. Hermansson, not really a takedown I've seen him go for. So, can he use it to grab the single and transition to a double? Maybe, but I mean, his main takedown really is either the double leg or he's very strong physically in the clinch, and that's where Gastelum is probably going to struggle because Hermansson is the taller fighter. Gastelum's, it's hard to take guys down from the body lock if they're really tall, like lanky type of fighters. Gastelum's not. Hermansson is going to be able to hit that body lock takedown, I would have thought, but I don't think Hermansson loves being hit. I know it's a silly thing to say, but, some guys kind of thrive off a war. I don't think Hermansson's that type of guy. And he could potentially slow down here as well. I think Gastelum's got the better engine. I think it's a very interesting fight for live bet. If Gastelum can survive round 1, make Hermansson work, get back to his feet, and we get a good line, I'd be interested in Gastelum after round 1. But Hermansson, he's very dangerous on the mat. He's got really good ground and pound. As I said, he's got a really dangerous transition. But, disclaimer here, I don't have a good read on this fight. I've always struggled historically betting both guys or betting against them. It's why I've rarely bet on them or against them. They're just 2 fighters I don't have a great read on. And Gastelum at middleweight always puts me off because I think he should be at welterweight. But I'm going to stick with my gut here. My gut pre-tape was Gastelum, so I'm going to pick Gastelum. The line at the minute is, he's the underdog at Bet Online. Pick him at a few sites. Slight favourite Gastelum at some, but Bet Online, he's actually the underdog now. Hermansson's minus 114, Gastelum minus 106. So I'm going to go Gastelum, but I'm not confident. I don't have a solid read on it. Main event is the rematch. Figueiredo taking on Joseph Benavidez. I'll keep this short and sweet. I think Figueiredo wins again. First fight, I just can't see what Benavidez can do different. They only fought a few months back. Benavidez is, he's at the end of his career now. His style's his style. He's always done that kind of, he lunges in head first. He's quick, he'll land some shots, but Figueiredo's just, his chin just looks iron. The shots just bounce off of him. I said earlier, the Pantoja shots were just bouncing off of him. So with Benavidez. Now, Benavidez was landing. You never know. This is MMA, 4-ounce gloves. He will land on Figueiredo, and, everyone has that sweet spot. And I use no greater example than someone like Omari Akhmedov, whose chin has looked very, very solid, and he got knocked out by Sergio Morales. Everyone has that sweet spot where they can be caught and knocked out. So never say never. And Figueiredo will get hit, but Benavidez, apparently he had a bad concussion. He's spoken about having some bad dizzy spells, going into a bit of a depression. I don't like that kind of talk, especially this guy's, he's had a long career. He's had a lot of tough fights. He got hurt against Sergio Pettis. He got knocked out by Mighty Mouse. Bad, he's coming off from a bad knockout loss here with Figueiredo. It's quite a quick turnaround. And I just struggle to see what he can do different. I think Figueiredo's too big. I think he's too strong physically. My one concern here is Figueiredo making weight. Someone told me a few days back that Figueiredo was already at 135. I'm not sure if I believe that. But, we'll find out today when they weigh in. But, surely Figueiredo doesn't mess this up and miss weight again. Second chance. Surely he can't mess it up. He's never missed weight before. I think that's the first time he'd missed weight. But it's always been a tough cut for him. The guy's huge for 125. Remember when he weighed in against Jared Brooks, he was literally crying from the weight cut. But I have to go with him here. And the line's a lot different now. He's a big favourite, minus 200. So I can understand why you'd be hesitant to play him. But an interesting angle. Someone in my Discord was actually talking about this yesterday. He was looking at the over 2.5. And then looking at Figueiredo by KO as a bit of a hedge. I've not looked at the lines yet. It's not. It depends. You'd have to bet. I mean, Figueiredo KO is plus 130, and the over is like over 2.5 is like plus minus 175. So not really doable. But I have to pick Figueiredo here. Is there any value on the money line? I mean, the only way I can see Benavidez winning is if he can last the 5 rounds and he wears Figueiredo down. I mean, Figueiredo did look like he was slowing against Pantoja, but he was still 3 rounds up. So, you know, Joby would have to win one of the first 3 rounds and then bank the last 2, and I just don't see it happening. So I've got to pick Figueiredo. I haven't bet the line. I don't know if I want to bet that price, but I just can't see there being a different outcome here. And I do not like the dizzy concussion talk that Benavidez has revealed either. So I'll go Figueiredo here. So that wraps up the card, guys. I see how I did. It's 46 minutes. It's still not as short as I wanted it to be. But that's the card wrapped up. If you want to sign up, ProMMABetting.com. Packages on there, all bets are tracked. I put bet slips and my stakes on Twitter. So if you want to sign up, £195 for the year. Keep an eye on the Twitter. I do run a discount for the yearly sometimes, so keep an eye out for that. Sometimes I'll do it for £150. Good luck with your bets. Hope you all cash, and I'll be back next week for the Teal Whittaker card.